اجائے ماں السلام علیکم، آداب، ویری گڈ مارننگ ٹو آل آف یو. شعبے تعلیم نسواں مولانا آزاد نیشنل اردو یونیورسٹی اور سینٹر فار اسٹڈی اینڈ ریسرچ نیو دہلی کی جانب سے منعقدہ ایک روزہ بین الاقوامی سیمینار کے اس افتتاحی اجلاس میں آپ تمام شرکاء اجلاس کا خیر مقدم کرتی ہوں. بالخصوص صدر اجلاس پروفیسر سید عین الحسن صاحب، وائس چانسلر مولانا آزاد نیشنل اردو یونیورسٹی، جو اس سیمینار کے محرک اور روح رواں رہے ہیں، جن کی سرپرستی اور حوصلہ افزائی کی بدولت اس سیمینار کے انعقاد کو عمل میں لایا جا سکا. دل کی گہرائیوں سے سر آپ کا استقبال ہے. آج کے اس افتتاحی اجلاس کے مہمان خصوصی پروفیسر اروندر انصاری صاحبہ، آنرری ڈائریکٹر سیسپ، اور پروفیسر شعبہ سماجیات جامعہ ملیہ اسلامیہ نیو دہلی کا بھی میں تہ دل سے استقبال کرتی ہوں. تھینک یو میم فار ایکسیپٹنگ آور انویٹیشن. ہمارے اس سیشن کی مہمان اعزازی محترمہ پروفیسر اجائل نمائی، ہیڈ سیسپ حیدرآباد سینٹرل یونیورسٹی. I wholeheartedly welcome you, ma'am, and extend my regards for accepting our invitation to grace today's occasion. ہمارے collaborating partner سینٹر فار ریسرچ اینڈ اسٹڈی کے ڈپٹی ڈائریکٹر ڈاکٹر محمد رضوان صاحب تھوڑی ہی دیر میں ہمارے ساتھ شامل ہوں گے. وہ کچھ سفر میں ہیں، تھوڑی سی تاخیر ہو رہی ہے، ان کو بھی ہم بہت جلد اپنے بیچ میں دیکھیں گے. اور جن کی انتھک کوششیں اور دن رات کی محنت کی وجہ سے اس سیمینار کو ہم پلان اور ایگزیکیوٹ کر پائیں، وہ ہیں ڈاکٹر آمنہ تحسین صاحبہ، صدر شعبہ تعلیم نسواں اور ڈائریکٹر سیمینار. ان کا بھی میں دلی خیر مقدم کرتی ہوں. اور آخر میں آپ تمام شرکاء اجلاس، جس میں ہمارے باہر سے آئے ہوئے مہمانان اور ٹیچنگ نان ٹیچنگ اسٹاف فرام ٹیکنیکل ٹیم آف IMC CSIT اینڈ انجینئرنگ سیکشن، اور ہمارے آن لائن ویورز جو ہمارے ساتھ جڑے ہوئے ہیں، our students and scholars. I welcome you all once again to this August occasion. یہ ہماری روایت رہی ہے کہ ہم کسی بھی پروگرام کے ابتدا جو ہے قرآن کے چند آیات کی تلاوت کے ساتھ کرتے ہیں. اور اسی اہم فریضے کو انجام دینے کے لیے میں ہمارے شعبے سے اسٹوڈنٹ مس سمیہ اور ریسرچ اسکالر مسٹر اسرار علی کو یہ آواز دینا چاہوں گی کہ وہ یہاں پہ کچھ آیات کی تلاوت پیش کریں اور ساتھ ہی ساتھ اس کا ترجمہ بھی ہمارے سامنے رکھیں. مس سمیہ اور اسرار علی.
السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. ان المسلمین والمسلمات والمؤمنین والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات والخاشعين والخاشعات والصادقات والصائمين والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Assalamu alaikum. Today we have choose the ayah of Holy Quran according to today's theme, which emphasizes on equality between men and women. Translation. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and most merciful, for Muslim men and women, for believing men and women, for devout men and women, for true men and women, for patient men and women, for humble men and women, for charitable men and women, for fasting men and women, for men and women who guard their chastity, and for men and women who engage much in Allah's praise. For them, Allah has prepared forgiveness and great reward. Shukriya.
बहुत शुक्रिया मिस सुमैया एंड मिस्टर इसरार अली. अब आगे बढ़ते हैं. मैं IMC की टीम से गुजारिश करती हूँ कि वो मानू का तराना पेश करें.
ये जामियाए ज़बान उर्दू, ये जामियाए ज़बान उर्दू, ज़बान उर्दू का आशिया है, ज़बान उर्दू का आशिया है. ये जामियाए ज़बान उर्दू, ये जामियाए ज़बान उर्दू. कलाम सारे है दर्ज रूह में, कलम से उतरा हुआ बदन है. ये इल्म का शहर घर है मेरा, मेरा मदरसा मेरा वतन है. तालीम का मौसम है, तहजीब की फसलें हैं, हम रोशनी करते हैं, सूरज की नस्लें हैं. उर्दू की उड़े खुशबू, ये जामियाए ज़बान उर्दू, ये जामियाए ज़बान उर्दू, ये जामियाए ज़बान उर्दू, ये जामियाए. जो दाना गुजरे थे इस ज़मीन से, जो दाना गुजरे थे इस ज़मीन से, वो इल्म के बीज बो गए हैं.
बड़े हुए जब पौधे बढ़ के, हमारे कद ऊंचे हो गए हैं। हम चांद की पेशानी जब छू के निकलते, कायनात में पाओ और मार्स पे चलते हैं। उर्दू की उड़े खुशबू,
ये जामिया है ज़बान उर्दू, 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 ज़बान उर्दू का आशियाँ है, ये जामिया है ज़बान उर्दू।
बहुत शुक्रिया। अब वक्त है आज के हमारे मोअज़्ज़िज़ मेहमानान को इस्तकबाल करें गुलदस्ते के ज़रिए, और इस काम के लिए मैं हमारे स्टूडेंट्स को आवाज़ देना चाहूँगी, हमारे डिपार्टमेंट के स्कॉलर्स, कि वो इस फरीज़े को अंजाम दें। सबसे पहले मैं आवाज़ दे रही हूँ मिस नसीमा को कि वो हमारे इज़्ज़तबाब वाइस चांसलर प्रोफेसर सैयद ऐनुल हसन साहब को गुलदस्ता पेश करें। अब मैं गुजारिश कर रही हूँ तनवीर से कि वो हमारे आज के चीफ गेस्ट प्रोफेसर अरविंदर अंसारी मैडम को बुके पेश करें। मैं आवाज़ देना चाहूँगी नौफिल को कि वो हमारे आज के गेस्ट ऑफ ऑनर प्रोफेसर अजायू नुमाई को बुके पेश करें। थैंक यू वेरी मच। आइए बाकायदा प्रोग्राम को आगे बढ़ाते हैं। अब मैं डॉक्टर आमना तहसीन साहिबा सदर शोबे तालीम निस्वा और डायरेक्टर सेमिनार से ख्वाहिश करती हूँ कि वो इस सेमिनार के बारे में और हमारी यूनिवर्सिटी और डिपार्टमेंट का एक मुख्तसर सा तारुफ आपके सामने पेश करें।
बेहद शुक्रिया डॉक्टर शबाना केसर। मनु के तराने और उर्दू की खुशबू के साथ साथ गुलों की महक के साथ मैं अपनी बात को शुरू करती हूँ। आप तमाम की खिदमत में मोहब्बतों भरा सलाम पेश करती हूँ। सबसे पहले डायस पर तशरीफ फरमा इस इजलास के सदर इज़्ज़त माब प्रोफेसर सैयद ऐनुल हसन साहब, वाइस चांसलर मौलाना आज़ाद नेशनल उर्दू यूनिवर्सिटी, आज के इस इजलास की मेहमान खुसूसी प्रोफेसर अरविंदर अंसारी साहबा और मेहमान एजाजी प्रोफेसर अजायलू, ऑडिटोरियम में तशरीफ फरमा तमाम प्रोफेसरान, मेहमानान, मानू फैमिली के तमाम अफराद, टीचिंग फैकल्टी, नॉन टीचिंग स्टाफ, रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स और स्टूडेंट्स, आप तमाम का आज के इस इजलास में, इस सेमिनार में जो कि मुनक्कद हो रहा है डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ विमेन एजुकेशन और सेंटर फॉर स्टडी एंड रिसर्च के इश्तिराक से, इसमें मैं आप तमाम का दिली खैर मकदम करती हूँ। ख़ास तौर पर मुझे ये देखकर बेहद खुशी हो रही है कि आज के इस प्रोग्राम में हमारे सामने वो नई नस्ल ज़्यादा तादाद में मौजूद है जिनके जहनों तक इस मौजू को पहुंचाना मुझे लगता है बेहद ज़रूरी है। इस हैसियत से बिल्कुल अभी इब्तिदाई लम्हात हैं इस प्रोग्राम के, लेकिन मुझे लग रहा है कि हम अपनी कोशिश में कामयाब होने जा रहे हैं। इस पॉजिटिव नोट के साथ बात को मैं अपनी आगे बढ़ाती हूँ। मुअज़्ज़ज़ हाज़रीन, जेंडर इक्वालिटी और विमेन एम्पावरमेंट, ये दोनों चीज़ें आज न सिर्फ پالیسی میکنگ کے لیے بلکہ زندگی کے تمام شعبوں میں نہایت اہمیت اختیار کر گئی ہے. چند سال پہلے کی بات ہے کہ جنڈر ایکوالٹی کا جو کانسیپٹ ہے یا جو ٹرمینالوجی ہے اس کو ہم نے کبھی زیادہ استعمال ہوتے ہوئے نہیں سنا. یہی وجہ ہے کہ یونائٹڈ نیشنز نے بھی جو ایجنڈا تیار کیا ہے سسٹینیبل ڈیولپمنٹ گول 2030 کا، اس میں جنڈر ایکوالٹی کو اہمیت دی ہے اور ایک پورا ایجنڈا کا ایک آئٹم نمبر 5 اسی کے لیے مختص کیا ہے، جس کے لیے ساری دنیا کے ممالک کوشش کر رہے ہیں اپنے اپنے اعتبار پر، اور وہیں ہندوستان بھی اس میں شامل ہے. اس کو 2015 میں یہ ایجنڈا بنایا گیا 2030 کے لیے، لیکن 5-6 سال گزرنے کے بعد، سال بہ سال تو جائزہ لیتے ہی ہیں، لیکن ایک رپورٹ جو سامنے آئی ہے جو 2022 میں شائع ہوئی ہے، وہ رپورٹ بتاتی ہے کہ تمام ممالک میں عورت اور مرد، لڑکیوں اور لڑکوں کو وہ اپرچونٹیز حاصل نہیں ہیں جو کہ ہونی چاہیے. اسی لیے جنڈر ایکوالٹی کا جو ٹارگٹ ہے وہ کسی حد تک بھی اچیو نہیں ہو پایا ہے. اس کے بہت سارے اسٹڈیز ہوتی رہتی ہیں اور ان تمام میں جو ایک بہت اہم پہلو سامنے آتا ہے وہ ہے سوسائٹی کا مائنڈ سیٹ، پریکٹسز، جو کہیں نہ کہیں رکاوٹ بنتے ہیں. لیکن حقیقت یہ بھی ہے اسی سوسائٹی میں کچھ ایسے افراد بھی ہوتے ہیں جو بہت اسٹرانگلی جنڈر ایکوالٹی پر اور ویمن امپاورمنٹ پر نہ صرف بلیو کرتے ہیں، بلیو رکھتے ہیں، بلکہ وہ پریکٹس بھی کرتے ہیں. ایسے ہی افراد میں ایک شخصیت پروفیسر سید انور الحسن صاحب کی ہے، جو بہت اچھا ویژن رکھتے ہیں اور مسلسل کوشش کرتے ہیں اس یونیورسٹی میں بھی کہ کس طرح سے اس کو عمل میں لایا جائے. اس کی کئی مثالیں ہیں، میں وہ یہاں پیش نہیں کروں گی. بہت سارے افراد یہ بات جانتے ہیں اور آئے دن وہ کوشش کرتے رہتے ہیں، اور جب موقع ہوتا ہے بات کا اس میں یہ پہلو ضرور لاتے ہیں، سب کی توجہ اس طرف دلاتے ہیں. تو میں دل کی گہرائیوں سے سر کا صرف استقبال نہیں کر رہی ہوں بلکہ یہ شکریہ ادا کر رہی ہوں کہ آپ کے ویژن نے ہم سب کے ذہنوں کو بھی کسی حد تک جھنجھوڑا ہے اور ہم اس طرف کوشش کر رہے ہیں. بہت شکریہ. ہماری یہ خوش نصیبی ہے کہ جب ہم یہ ابھی سوچ ہی رہے تھے اس پروسیس کو، سیمینار کو منعقد کرنے کے سلسلے میں، تو یہ بہت اہم پہلو ہمارے سامنے آیا. ہمارے جو کولیبریٹیو پارٹنر ہیں سینٹر فار اسٹڈی اینڈ ریسرچ کے افراد، خاص طور پر ڈپٹی ڈائریکٹر ڈاکٹر محمد رضوان سے جب بات چیت ہونے لگی تو یہ بات بہت کھل کے آئی. کئی پہلوؤں پر ہم نے، کئی موضوعات پر ہم نے غور کیا، لیکن جب یہ ریلیجن اینڈ جینڈر والا جب موضوع ہم نے چنا تو مجھے بہت حیرت ہوئی کہ اس اسٹڈی سینٹر، جو سینٹر فار اسٹڈی اینڈ ریسرچ کے جو ایگزیکٹو ممبرز ہیں، اتنے کھلے دل سے اس موضوع کا انہوں نے استقبال کیا. میں چاہوں گی کہ زوردار تالیاں ان کے لیے بجیں. وجہ یہ ہے کہ ایک جو سماج میں ایک جو نوشن ہے یا پھر ایک جو پریکٹسز ہے، جب کبھی ہم جنڈر ایکوالٹی کی یا ویمن امپاورمنٹ کی بات کرتے ہیں تو ہم دیکھتے ہیں کہ یہ خواتین سے جڑ جاتا ہے کہ خواتین ہی بولیں گے، خواتین ہی اس پر کام کریں گے، یا وہی آگے آتی ہیں تاکہ ہم اس پر ایک ڈسکورس قائم کر سکیں، ایک ڈسکشن، ایک ڈائلاگ قائم کر سکیں. لیکن جب اس طرح کے ادارے ہمارے ساتھ جڑتے ہیں یا پروفیسر سید انور الحسن صاحب جیسے افراد ہماری سرپرستی کرتے ہیں تو ہمیں لگتا ہے کہ یہ راستے جو بہت مشکل بھرے تھے اب آسان ہونے لگے ہیں. تو میں وہ تمام ایگزیکٹو ممبر جو سینٹر فار اسٹڈی اینڈ ریسرچ سے جڑے ہیں، میں ان کی خدمت میں ڈپارٹمنٹ آف ویمن ایجوکیشن، مولانا آزاد نیشنل اردو یونیورسٹی کی جانب سے میں ان کا شکریہ ادا کرتی ہوں اور امید کرتی ہوں کہ یہ جو ڈائلاگ کے لیے یہ پلیٹ فارم، جب کولیبریٹیو کوششیں یہ ہو رہی ہیں، اس طرح کے مزید ہم پروگرامز فیوچر میں کر پائیں گے. ہماری یہ بھی خوش نصیبی ہے کہ جب ہم نے یہ موضوع چنا تو جب ہم نے جن ماہرین سے بات کی جو اپنے شعبوں کے ایکسپرٹس ہیں ان لوگوں نے بہت خوش دلی سے اس کو اپنایا, اپریشیٹ کیا کہ اس موضوع پر بات اکیڈمکس میں ہونی چاہیے, ایسے جو ہائر ایجوکیشن سسٹم میں اس پر بات ہونی چاہیے. تو میں بہت ادب و احترام کے ساتھ میں ان تمام ماہرین کا, جن کا میں ابھی یہاں نام لوں گی, نام بنام میں ان کا شکریہ ادا کرنا چاہوں گی, ان کا استقبال کرنا چاہوں گی آج کے اس سیشن میں, جو آج ابھی موجود ہیں, جو کچھ دیر بعد مختلف سیشنز میں وہ لوگ شامل ہوں گے. تو میں ان تمام کا استقبال کرتے ہوئے میں ان کا شکریہ ادا کرتی ہوں. خاص طور پر اس انوگرل سیشن میں ڈاکٹر سلیم ابراہیم جو فیکلٹی ہے ہارورڈ ڈیوینٹی اسکول USA کی, وہ ہمیں ورچولی مخاطب کریں گی. پروفیسر اروندر انصاری ہمارے ساتھ موجود ہیں, پروفیسر اجائلو ہمارے ساتھ موجود ہیں, جو کچھ ہی دیر میں شیئر کریں گی اپنے ایکسپیرینسز یہاں. پروفیسر سبیہ حسین صاحبہ جامعہ ملیہ سے تشریف لائی ہیں, میں ان کا بھی استقبال کرتی ہوں. ڈاکٹر محمد اکرم ندوی صاحب جو ڈین کیمبرج اسلامک سینٹر انگلینڈ میں ہیں, وہ وہاں سے ویلیڈکٹری سیشن میں ہمیں مخاطب کریں گے. پروفیسر ریکھا پانڈے کو سبھی ہم جانتے ہیں, جو حیدرآباد سینٹرل یونیورسٹی سے جن کا تعلق رہا ہے, وہ جنڈر پر بہت کام کرتی رہی ہیں, خاص طور پر ریلیجن جنڈر پر بھی. وہ اس وقت امریکہ میں ہے, وہ وہاں سے ویلیڈکٹری سیشن میں ہمارے ساتھ جڑیں گی. پروفیسر آمنہ کشور صاحبہ جو ہماری سابق ڈین اسکول آف لینگویجز اینڈ لنگوسٹکس ہیں MANUU کی, وہ تھوڑی دیر میں تشریف لائیں گی, وہ بھی یہاں پر. ڈاکٹر منیشا سیٹی ہیں جو نلسار یونیورسٹی سے تشریف لائیں گی, اور نیکسٹ جو پینل سیشن ڈسکشن ہے اس میں وہ حصہ لیں گی. ہم نے ڈاکٹر سسٹر لیلا فرانسس کو بھی ہم نے انوائٹ کیا ہے, بس وہ تھوڑی ہی دیر میں یہاں موجود ہوں گی. آ گئی ہیں, آپ کا میں ویلکم کرتی ہوں میم, بہت شکریہ, تھینک یو سو مچ, تھینک یو سو مچ. تو اور ڈاکٹر فرزانہ خان ہیں جو پروگرام ہیڈ ہیں مائی چوائس فاؤنڈیشن. اس کے علاوہ ہماری اپنی اسکول آف آرٹس اینڈ سوشل سائنسز کے پروفیسران, ڈین صاحبہ, پروفیسر فریدہ صدیقی, پروفیسر فہیم اختر صاحب, پروفیسر محمد شاہد صاحب, پروفیسر شاہدہ, یہ بھی مختلف سیشنز میں نہ صرف اس کی صدارت کریں گے بلکہ اپنے اپنے تجربات, اپنے اپنے خیالات اس موضوع پر وہ پیش کریں گے. اور اس کے علاوہ اس ہمارے ڈیفرنٹ سیشن سے ہمارے دیگر فیکلٹیز بھی, ڈاکٹر KM ضیاء الدین, ڈاکٹر اکرام الحق, ڈاکٹر کھانڈے پرویز صاحب بھی جڑے ہیں. اس طرح سے مجھے بہت بے انتہا خوشی اس بات کی ہے کہ اسکول آف آرٹس اینڈ سوشل سائنسز کے مختلف فیکلٹیز ڈفرینٹ ڈپارٹمنٹ سے اس سیمینار سے جڑے ہیں. تو میں اس سیمینار کو اپنے اسکول آف آرٹس اینڈ سوشل سائنسز کی ڈین اور تمام ڈپارٹمنٹس کو میں اس کو معنون کرتی ہوں. اس سیمینار کو یہ صرف میری یا ہماری صرف ڈپارٹمنٹ آف ویمن ایجوکیشن کی ہی کوشش نہیں ہے. یہ سیمینار کامیاب اگر ہوگا تو ان تمام کی کوششوں سے ہوگا. اس کے علاوہ شہر سے اور ہمارے MANUU کے دیگر ڈپارٹمنٹ سے جو افراد آئے ہیں, ان تمام کا, پیپر پریزنٹرز کا, ریسرچ اسکالرز کا, سب کا میں استقبال کرتے ہوئے 2-4 باتیں ضرور ہمارے ڈپارٹمنٹ کی اور کچھ سیمینار کے بارے میں بات کرنا چاہوں گی. مولانا آزاد نیشنل اردو یونیورسٹی کا قیام 98 میں عمل میں آیا, یہ تو ہم میں سے بہت سارے جانتے ہیں, اور ہم یہ بھی جانتے ہیں کہ اس کے مینڈیٹ میں ایک بے حد اہم مینڈیٹ, میں سمجھتی ہوں کہ یہ ایک واحد یونیورسٹی ہے جس کا فوکس خاص طور پر ویمن امپاورمنٹ تھرو ایجوکیشن بھی رکھا گیا ہے. ہمارے درمیان چونکہ بہت سارے نئے مہمان ہیں, ان کے لیے بھی میں یہ بتانا چاہتی ہوں, دراصل اسی مینڈیٹ کو کسی نہ کسی مینڈیٹ کا حصہ ہے ڈپارٹمنٹ آف ویمن ایجوکیشن. اور ہماری یونیورسٹی ان چند یونیورسٹیز میں ایک ہے جہاں سینٹر فار ویمن اسٹڈیز بھی ہے. تو ڈپارٹمنٹ کے تحت ہم ویمن اسٹڈیز کا ماسٹرز اینڈ ریسرچ پروگرام 2004 سے آفر کر رہے ہیں. میں یہ بھی بتانا چاہوں گی کہ 2004 کے بعد سے ہم لوگ مسلسل یہ کوشش کر رہے ہیں کہ جو ویمن ایشوز ہیں یا سماج میں جو ایشوز ہیں ان کو جنڈر لینس سے देखने की कोशिश की जाए, समाज में ऐसे जहन पैदा किए जाएं जो अपने आसपास के रियलिटीज को बहुत तनकीदी, बहुत क्रिटिकली देख सकते हैं और सही और गलत में फैसला कर सकते हैं। तो इस तरह से हमारे पास 2004-2005 से जब हमारा रिसर्च प्रोग्राम शुरू हुआ है तो हमें बहुत सी ऐसी कामयाबी मुख्तलिफ हिंदुस्तान की मुख्तलिफ रियासतों के रेफरेंस में हमें काम करने का मौका मिला, और हमारे डिपॉजिटरी में ऐसे मकाले हैं जो मुख्तलिफ हिंदुस्तान की मुख्तलिफ रियासतों की ख़वातीन या वो जेंडर इशूज़ जो बहुत अहम है, जो प्रैक्टिस में हैं, वो हमें पढ़ने को, समझने को मिली हैं। बहुत जल्द वो चीज़ें बाहर पब्लिश होंगी तो ये भी एक बहुत बड़ा रिकॉर्ड होगा। इसके अलावा मैं ज़रूर ये भी कहना चाहूँगी कि ये जो हमारा जो मैंडेट है और जो ये उर्दू यूनिवर्सिटी है, इससे बहुत ज़्यादा फ़ायदा उर्दू कम्युनिटी में लड़कियों को हो रहा है। एक डिस्टेंस प्रोग्राम की वजह से जो रीच टू अनरीच का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है वो उर्दू यूनिवर्सिटी बहुत हद तक उसको कर पा रही है, और सचर कमेटी ने जिन जिन इलाकों की निशानदही की थी तालीमी एतबार से कमी के को सामने रखकर, उन इलाकों में मौलाना आज़ाद यूनिवर्सिटी के स्कूल्स और स्टडी सेंटर्स पहुंचने की कोशिश करते हैं, और उसकी वजह से वो जो मार्जिनलाइज थे, वो जो तालीम से बाहर थे, वो किसी हद तक हमसे जुड़ पाए हैं। तो और जब वो रेगुलर एजुकेशन में आते हैं तो हमारे पास ये भी डेटा है कि बहुत सारे ऐसी लड़कियां, ऐसे लड़के भी यकीनन, लेकिन ज्यादा तादाद उन लड़कियों की रही जो फर्स्ट जनरेशन ग्रेजुएट्स हैं। कहीं ना कहीं हिंदुस्तान में जब विमेन एजुकेशन की बात होगी तो हमारा एक मुख्तसर सा ही, छोटा सा ही सही, हमारा कंट्रीब्यूशन मानू का होगा, जो मुसलसल ये कोशिश कर रहा है। मैं जो बार बार कहती हूँ कि रीच टू अनरीच का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है उसमें मानू कहीं ना कहीं अपना रोल प्ले कर रहा है। तो ये मैं बहुत फख्र से बताना चाहती हूँ जब भी मौका मिलता है। आइए मौजू की तरफ चलते हैं। मौजू जो मजहब और सिंफ, रिलीजन और जेंडर का जो मौजू है, इस पर बोलने के लिए जाहिर है हमारे पास बहुत सारे एक्सपर्ट्स मौजूद हैं। सिर्फ चंद बातें मैं जरूर ये कहना चाहूंगी कि मजहब, कोई मजहब हो, चाहे किसी अकीदे का हो, वो बुनियादी उसके जो नजरियात होते हैं वो ह्यूमैनिटी एंड पीस और इक्वालिटी पर मबनी जरूर होते हैं, और एक बेहतरीन समाजी जिंदगी का कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट होते हैं। लेकिन जब यही कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट मजहब को एज ए सोशल इंस्टीट्यूट के कंस्ट्रक्ट करता है तो वहां से जो इंटरप्रिटेशंस होते हैं या उस पर जो तौज़ी या तशरी होती है, कहीं ना कहीं उसमें तब्दीलियां आने लगती हैं, और वो इंटरप्रिटेशन खास टाइम एंड स्पेस, खास मेंटालिटी, एम्पावर्ड लोग उनके तहत होते रहे सदियों से, तो कहीं ना कहीं वो मैस्कुलिनिटी या फेमिनाइनिटी का एक कॉन्सेप्ट ऐसे डेवलप हुआ, ऐसे फ्रेमवर्क डेवलप हुए, जिसकी वजह से पब्लिक एंड प्राइवेट डिवाइड भी बढ़ती चली गई। कहीं ना कहीं औरत अपनी इंसानी हैसियत एज ए ह्यूमन बीइंग के उसका स्टेटस कहीं कमजोर हो गया। आज वो जो डिसेमिनेशन ऑफ नॉलेज अबाउट रिलीजन होता रहा, वो कहीं ना कहीं समाज में प्रैक्टिसेस बनकर आज तक वो चल रहा है। बहुत हम कोशिश करते हैं, बहुत एजुकेशन पर काम हो रहा है, हम एक नॉलेज सोसाइटी में आ गए हैं, बावजूद उसके बहुत से ऐसे सवाल हैं जिस पर हमें गौर करने की ज़रूरत है, और उन्हीं सवालों पर गौर करने के लिए, बहस करने के लिए, कंस्ट्रक्टिव बहस के लिए, अच्छे वे फॉरवर्ड देखने के लिए, उसके स्ट्रैटेजीज तय करने के लिए आज हम सब यहाँ जमा हैं। तो मैं एक बार फिर बहुत दिल की गहराइयों से आप तमाम का इस्तकबाल करते हुए अपनी बात खत्म करती हूँ। बेहद शुक्रिया।
बहुत शुक्रिया डॉक्टर आमना तहसीन साहिबा, आपने बहुत ही मुख्तसर से वक्त में यूनिवर्सिटी और हमारे डिपार्टमेंट और साथ ही साथ सेमिनार की नौयत पे भी रोशनी डाली। अब वक्त है हमारे मौजूद मेहमानान को हम यादगारी तोहफा दें, जिसके लिए मैं फिर से हमारे डिपार्टमेंट के स्टूडेंट्स को यहाँ वॉलंटियर्स को आवाज़ देना चाहूँगी. ये वॉलंटियर्स डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ वुमेन एजुकेशन, मानू और CSR न्यू दिल्ली की जानिब से हमारे मेहमानान को दिया जाएगा. सबसे पहले मैं दरख्वास्त करती हूँ शुजात साहब से, जो कि रिसर्च एसोसिएट हैं सेंटर फॉर स्टडी एंड रिसर्च के, कि वो हमारे प्रोफेसर सैयद ऐनुल हसन साहब वाइस चांसलर को मोमेंटो पेश करें. बहुत शुक्रिया शुजात साहब. जी, मैं प्रोफेसर ऐनुल हसन साहब से दरख्वास्त करती हूँ कि वो हमारे आज के चीफ गेस्ट और गेस्ट ऑफ ऑनर दोनों को मोमेंटो पेश करें. सबसे पहले अरविंदर मैडम को मोमेंटो पेश किया जाएगा. अब मैं दरख्वास्त करती हूँ सर से कि वो प्रोफेसर अजाइलू नुमाई को मोमेंटो पेश करें. BC साहब से दरख्वास्त है कि हमारे डायरेक्टर ऑफ सेमिनार डॉक्टर आमना तहसीन साहिबा को भी मोमेंटो पेश किए. जी, बहुत शुक्रिया सर.
मैं सर से दरख्वास्त करूंगी कि इस सेमिनार की कन्वीनर डॉक्टर शबाना केसर को भी मोमेंटो पेश करें. बहुत मेहनत है.
बहुत शुक्रिया सर. अब मैं शुजात फहद साहब से दरख्वास्त करती हूँ कि वो मुख्तसर सा सेंटर फॉर स्टडी एंड रिसर्च का तारुफ हमारे सामने पेश करें, क्योंकि रिजवान साहब अभी ज्वाइन नहीं हुए हैं, तो उनकी नुमाइंदगी जो है शुजात साहब करेंगे.
Respected dignitaries present on the dais, Professor Syed Ainul Hassan Sahab, Vice Chancellor MANUU, Professor Arvind Ansari, Professor Ajailu, Dr. Amina ma'am, Dr. Shabana Kaisar ma'am, teaching and non-teaching staff, research scholars, students, and participants present here, as well as online participants. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. As Dr. Shabana Kaisar rightly mentioned, due to some unavoidable circumstances, Dr. Rizwan will be joining us in the next session, inshallah. First of all, I am very grateful and thankful to MANUU Women's Education Department for giving us the opportunity and collaborating with us for spreading our vision on the topic of gender and religion, belief, practices, and beyond. The Center for Study and Research is a newly established research institute. Its vision, as stated on its website, is it to evolve a purposeful, holistic, and value-based knowledge. CSR is convinced that the current education system and knowledge ecosystem in which knowledge is produced, consumed, and disseminated has specific in its epistemology and its methodology and its value system. So the question is, what exactly do we mean when we say purposeful, holistic, and alternative paradigm? The Western epistemology of knowledge has serious flaws. The current epistemology of knowledge is fundamentally based on the naturalistic methodology of knowledge production, where statistics, data, concepts, hypotheses, and number take central stage. And all other types of knowledge are forbidden. All other methods of acquiring knowledge are also prohibited. We believe that scientism, not science, is shaping the current epistemology of the contemporary knowledge ecosystem. We also believe that the naturalistic methodology has significant flaws. It appears to be a point of contention in the physical sciences too. When it comes to complex traits like religiosity, gender, psychology, human behavior, sociology, including different humans in different religions, societies, and so on, the naturalistic methodology, logical positivism, should be used with caution. Despite its flaws, naturalistic methodology has gained significant, if not entirely epistemic folds. CSR believes that this fold should be weakened. CSR does not intend to completely undermine naturalistic methodology. Rather, it seeks to create its own niche in the existing ecosystem of naturalistic methodology. So what exactly is Western epistemology? We recognize and believe that epistemology is central to all knowledge creation activities. Western modernity's epistemology has roots in a specific socioculture milieu that existed when it was evolving. And this is not entirely Western because they inherited that epistemology from the Greeks inherited from the epistemology from the Arabs, and so on. The notion that epistemology is central to knowledge production is central to the epistemological debate. CSR believes that Eurocentric modernity has had a significant impact on Western European epistemology, resulting in knowledge that we consume and disseminate. CSR believes that the current epistemology does not consider transcendental realities, in particular revelation. According to CSR, unless epistemology corrects itself regarding transcendental realities, it will not produce the desired result, which will ultimately harm the cause of knowledge. So, with purposeful, we mean this transcendental and the epistemological basis, an alternative paradigm apart from naturalistic and logical positivistic approach. The holism of Western epistemology of knowledge is the second issue CSR wants to deal with. What does CSR mean with from holism? Contemporary Western epistemology do not practice or preach conventional holism. According to CSR, holism is about integrating knowledge and is about reductionism. CSR believes in holism because it means considering everything and not being fragmented and elementalized, an elementalistic view of knowledge. So this was our basic idea from which CSR initiated its journey. The major objectives of CSR is as follows. The first and foremost, we would like to address and study the policies of India and abroad and global policies as well. We would like to approach the problems of Indian society with the solution from Islamic perspective. Watch the changing cultural, political, social, ideological, ethical, and lifestyle related trends and their critical review. The study of Indian society, we want to study the Indian society, its philosophies, practical issues, modern trends, etc., both theoretical and applied aspects. For achieving these objectives, we have formed various groups and councils. Delhi Council on Philosophical Research and Fundamental in Knowledge and its Acquisition, which is led by Dr. Yusuf Amin Sahab, Professor of AMU. Council on Legal Studies, led by Professor Afzal Qadri and Dr. Faizan Mustafa. Indian Council on Islamic Perspective in Psychology, led by Professor Akbar Hussain and Naved Iqbal of Jamia Millia Islamia. Council on Historical Research and Teaching, led by Professor Parvez Nazir. Research Committee on Fourth Industrial Revolution in Indian Society. Council on Economic and Management Research. Council on Social Research. Council on Education Research and Teaching. Political Research, Literature Research, and it is further added by Gender Studies. which is currently led by Dr. Shabana. Bioethics and reproductive technology by Dr. Aisha, and disruptive technology. These objectives and these group and councils try to achieve the vision of CSR by organizing various programs, workshops, conferences, and seminars. To mention few, CSR and Indian Council on Islamic Perspective on Psychology organized a 2 days international conference on 25th and 26th November 2017. Again, with the collaboration of ISIP, we organized 3 days conference, international conference on psychology of religion and spirituality with the collaboration of Aligarh Muslim University. CSR, with the collaboration of Council on Legal Studies and Jamia Law Department, organized a 1-day conference on 22nd September 2018. And major impact and outcome of CSR through our endeavors, as you know that knowledge generation and knowledge appraisal is a laborious and time-consuming process, particularly with a worldview which is in stark contrast to the contemporary knowledge ecosystem, both in terms of its foundation and its priorities. Still, CSR manages to conceptualize and roll on an idea with little resources of intellectual activism, successfully floated the concept of convinced reasonable number of academicians to work with us, formed many groups as mentioned before, and domains of social research. Organize, this is the 9th national and international conferences which impacted many academicians. Some of them admitted that it changed the nature of their research, such as a professor in IIT Mumbai admitted that he is now more focused on Islamic concept of nafs and ruh in his research. A group head of psychology has voluntarily reviewed the syllabus and courses offered by Indian University and suggested Islamic psychology can also be offered as major subject in graduation. So these and much more are the impact of CSR. So finally, again, I would like to thank Professor Sayyid Ainul Hasan Sahab for giving us the chance and collaborating with us. Department of Women Education, Dr. Amina. And for the final message, I would ask all of the research scholars to join us in this noble cause by collaborating and contributing for developing a holistic, purposeful, value-based, alternative knowledge paradigm. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shujaduddin Fahad, Research Associate from Center for Study and Research, New Delhi. It's time for a keynote address. Dr. Celine Ibrahim from Harvard University School, USA. Actually, she was going to present her virtual presentation over here, but due to some travel issues, she has sent her video lecture, recorded video lecture, which we would like to play her. Before I call for IMC team to play the lecture, I would just very briefly introduce her. Dr. Celine Ibrahim is an internationally recognized specialist, especially in the religious studies, with a focus on formative period of Islamic history and on the histories of inter-religious encounter. She is the author of award-winning monograph, Women and Gender in Quran, which was published by Oxford University Press 2020, and her latest book entitled Islam and Monotheism by the Cambridge University Press. She is also the editor of one of the book, One Nation Indivisible, Seeking Liberty and Justice from the Pulpit on the Streets. It is by Stock Publishers 2019. Dr. Ibrahim's, there are a number of articles on Islamic family law and women history, which has been appeared in dozens of academic national and international journals. Because due to paucity of time, I may not present her very vast work area. She has done a lot of work on her research area, and I request all of you to visit her website, which is by her name, Dr. Celine Ibrahim Holi, to go for her publications and articles which we can read on over there. So it's a request because there's no time for a lengthy biodata of hers. Now I request the IMC team to please play the video lecture, recorded video lecture, which she has sent for us as a keynote address.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings and peace, everyone. My name is Dr. Celine Ibrahim, and it's my pleasure to deliver the address today, albeit virtually. I wanted to thank the organizers from the Department of Women Education at Maulana Azad National Urdu University and the Center for Study and Research in Hyderabad. We are skilled as Homo sapiens at allowing our various differences, gender, religion, ethnicity, caste, and so forth, to set people against each other in exploitative dynamics. Women, as a social category, are obviously diverse, yet many of us from societies across the globe share a common embodied experience and common social experiences. Quite possibly since the prehistoric agricultural revolution that historians speculate entrenched patriarchal norms, a historical trend can be discerned. Those of us Homo sapiens who are socialized as girls and women often have to contend with customs and laws that effectively suppress our social status in comparison to those who are socialized as boys and men. 30 plus years of life experience as a female and reading copious amounts of feminist theory and a few television docudramas have taught me that much. At the same time, I've spent my career in ethics and in Islamic studies thinking through dynamics around what constitutes just societies, societies that do not exploit less powerful members. The Quran, prophetic traditions, and the Islamic intellectual heritage are profoundly concerned with justice, fairness, goodness, human flourishing, moral beauty, and how to articulate and inculcate character traits in society that are positive and life-giving. 1,400 years of an Islamic intellectual legacy, and there's much to commend in our achievements and in the tradition. At the same time, Muslim luminaries, as pious and well-intentioned human beings as they were, may in some areas have fallen short of their highest ideals in articulating what constitutes a just society. A male-dominated scholarly class, elite men on the whole, lacked an adequate vantage point to understand particularly the interests of women, who have remained a marginalized group and vulnerable in many societies to the whims of the dominant male class. As an adage goes, if you're not seated at the table, you might be the lunch. Women the world over, from myriad backgrounds, have been vying for seats at the table and have been sustaining and fashioning our own tables from the fibers of our spiritual traditions and our heritages. At times, those of us who are advocating for women's well-being are united by our common aims. Yet at times we are pitted against one another by identity markers, our nationalities, and our ideological views. For instance, liberal, progressive, Western-inspired feminists often assume that religion and religious practices are outdated and anti-feminist. From this view, religion is seen as legitimizing, validating, and perpetuating patriarchy, unethical status quos, and gender injustice. This position holds that religion can never be the organizing principle of a well-functioning, modern civil society. Yet I want to urge us all to consider how attention to the nuances of Islamic thought, Islamic ethics, Islamic jurisprudence, working within this system, so to speak, may constitute our better long-term strategy for achieving women-friendly reform. pushing for wholly secularized reform along the paradigms developed primarily by Western or Western-leading actors in Muslim societies can actually exacerbate the fraught social tensions and lead to increasing polarization among Islamic and secular lines. The risks for violence to erupt in such a destabilized political environment are too great, and we know the costs that women and girls bear when security has been compromised. Religious conservatism comes in many flavors, and obviously not are all driven by misogynistic impulses. Still, we encounter the proposition that males are inherently superior to females by God-given design in the attitudes of contemporary Muslims, and even in certain historic interpretations from our formative years. Some intellectuals of renown in the Islamic tradition have posited that men are superior to women because men are prophets, are the bulk of the learned, have been the caliphs and the imams, are uniquely tasked with upholding the collective defense, give the call to prayer, offer the Friday sermon, have greater powers of witness, have more shares in inheritance, receive double blood money compensation, or women receive half of men, and have certain privileges in marriage and divorce, and men pass along their lineage by the male name. And let us not forget, they have beards. Beards have to count for something, or at least they did when the esteemed Arabic grammarian and exegete al-Zamakhshari, who died in the middle of the 12th century Common Era and the early part of the 6th Islamic century, articulated beards among the rationales for men's superiority in his 12th century Quran commentary. Prophethood, beards, blood money, witnesses, and the rest aside for now, males and females have a clear reproductive complementarity. This is an observable fact. We wouldn't be here without it. The different physiological roles that males and females play in reproduction do create some conditions for unique sets of rights and responsibilities. But this complementarity does not justify or necessitate a gender hierarchy. Spousal relations, for instance, are one important area in which Muslim feminists are working to ensure a more amenable, more fair articulation of justice that's sensitive to sex-based difference and to female dignity. Emphasizing reciprocal rights and responsibilities, many Muslim feminist scholars and thinkers see partnership, raising progeny, as cooperative enterprises, mediated by a central theological truth that only God is supreme. In effect, the marital bond, so a feminist position might argue, is not to formally institute hierarchical power of men over women, where men are endowed with dominance, where wives must be obedient, where husbands unilaterally have a right of correction. All of these principles have been articulated in our tradition. Instead, from a feminist point of view, a guiding principle of marriage goes back to the Quranic ideal of fostering reciprocal love and intimate compassion. To establish contractual mechanisms for recognizing and securing each party's rights and responsibilities, we must work within the structures of Islamic ethics and jurisprudence. We must protect the interests of children that are a consequence of the intimate bond between the partners. In Muslim marital ethics, mutuality, compassion, partnership, collaboration, these are the essential aspects of what makes a successful marriage. The normative paradigm should not be one of female subservience to male authority, as many a classical Muslim thinker would articulate. Suffice it to observe that cooperation and subservience are very different models for human relationship. Which one do we think is going to be more successful? In thinking about cooperation, we must evoke the concept of equity. Some notions of gender justice operate in an intellectual milieu where justice is equated with sameness, and where fairness is synonymous with impartiality. But we have to think in more complex terms when we're thinking of the differences between males and females, because differences do exist. Equity may be a more powerful political value. We want equality, certainly, in political representation, in personal status, laws, for instance, that confer citizenship. But when we come to the workings of the family, there might indeed be different rights and responsibilities that are given to each partner. Females have an inherent vulnerability, it's true, given that males as a generic category are physically more inclined and more capable, generally, to overpower us due to an aggregate physical advantage that is simply made possible by the specific components of their adrenal system. Males, though, in turn, have an inherent vulnerability. They need us to survive. Sadly, the number of reported cases of domestic violence, sexual violence perpetrated by males against females attests to the reality of a certain type of dominance of men over women. But this is not the ideal. This must be accounted for in developing people's character so they do not become dominant. While there are females who do perpetuate crimes against their domestic partners, this is really a very small percentage of what we find when we look at sociological data. Accordingly, the Quran has several verses directed towards protecting females against undesired sexual advantages and gender-based violence. We need to build upon what we find in the Quran to safeguard women the world over and girls. To point towards aggregate male physical power to justify male political dominance or a gender-based supremacy, it's misguided. Seeking to inscribe male superiority using the levers of religion, it's an unjust rendering of the divine will. It's a disservice to females. It's an attitude that we need to redress in many, many of our communities. In another gender-based ruling that makes plausible sense, the Quran puts the financial burdens of raising families on the male members in the kinship structure in the first order. This is a normative prescription. Ask sociologists, and again, we find that actually females are often contributing to the financial viability of the kinship unit. So within Islamic ethics, females may contribute to family finances, may work, may hold jobs, but do not shoulder the primary burden. In legal theory, at least if they often do in practice shoulder the primary burden. This provision for male financial support, we can reason, has something to do not with male superiority, but with female labor, literally. Although not all women bear children, either because they opt not to or unable to, most adult females, even in the modern age with mostly reliable birth control available to a good number of women, certainly not all, women still do get pregnant on the whole at least more than once in their lifetime. And even with medical advances, the process is still physically draining and can carry serious life-threatening complications. So yes, we can send rovers to Mars, but female mortality remains an issue when it comes to giving birth. Scholar and Muslim historian and intellectual Maysam Faruqi observes that because of the already existing biological demands on the woman, she never has to shoulder also, in addition, the financial responsibilities of a family, of providing for the family. And Islamic law never makes her liable for the well-being of her offspring in a financial sense. Her partner, who is equally responsible for bringing the children into the world, is responsible in the primary order for paying for the children's needs and the needs of the mother. The welfare of the child is an absolute necessity in Islamic law, and it's a it's commendable that our tradition articulates the rights that children have. Let's just say, if we want to put a feminist spin on this, that because the female is preferred by God for the task of incubating the fetus and even breastfeeding for those who do, it follows that men are having the moral responsibility to look after and care for women and to spend from their material possessions to support the females in their kinship group. This relationship can be inferred from a woman-centric reading of Quran 434. A woman-centric reading has female honor and dignity and collaboration between spouses rather than male authority.
Actually, the video is of 40 minutes. So because paucity of time and there's an urgent meeting for our Vice Chancellor, he may have to leave early. So we have just stopped the video in between. Almost she has covered the most important points based on our theme, gender and religion. And we had requested her to upload her video on her website. So there's no worry about that. We can anytime go and visit that website and we can hear her video. And now I would like to invite a person who is epitome of knowledge, wisdom, and intellect. He is none other than our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Syed Ainul Hasan Sahab. मैं बहुत ही अदब और एहतराम से आपसे गुजारिश करती हूँ आपके खिताब के लिए.
Respected dignitaries, participants, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, girls and boys. I'm not the expert, but yes, I know certain realities I can share with you. And I can encourage you to participate in such deliberations. Number of experts are here. You will listen to their experiences, researches, scholarly presentations. But yes, I know there are two notions right from the very beginning, right from when the process of evolution started. And the notion was, it was set forth by the Greek society. You go through the Greek history, you will find what is notion. There are two categories of people, stronger and weaker. The notion. I say notion, not principle. So what happened? Our cities are built by very strong hand. Athens, we started Olympiad. What happened? Then the Greeks and the Spartans, and then you can see what exactly is written on Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, and later on you see later development and final development. The film, Hollywood film 300. See, all these things are man-made. But let me tell you, there are two notions. There's something which we call man versus God. And then the other one is man versus man. As long as it is man versus God, there is a room for fearing. Well, there is someone is stronger. Man versus man, it invites challenge, battlefield, wars. And you know what happens? What the result is? That there is an urge to overpower someone who is weaker. And what exactly has been happening? Danish Saab is here. Yes, you will correct me. You see, what exactly has happened throughout the history? Now what? What are the lessons? What we have to gather? The essence, the very sense of coming to this world. अभी मुझे रास्ते में एक प्रोफेसर मिले बहुत दिनों बाद, just coming out of my house. So I say, oh, wonderful. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. अरे औरतों पर सेमिनार है, आइए चलते हैं, कुछ बोल दीजिएगा। कल मेरी तैयारी नहीं है। मैंने कहा औरत पे बोलने के लिए तैयारी की क्या जरूरत है? यही हो रहा है, This is happening. इसके लिए क्या तैयारी? सारी तारीख है, मुहावरे बने हुए हैं। अच्छा, मर्द औरत को पहचानेगा कैसे? उनका एक दरख्त के नीचे दो औरतें मिल जाएं और अगर आपस में बात करें तो पहचान लीजिएगा कि औरतें हैं। अच्छा, औरत के जेवर की बात आई, सबसे बड़ा जेवर सुकूत है। तालियां ना बजाइएगा इसके ऊपर, वो खतरनाक है, ये इट्स वेरी डेंजरस। फिर क्या हुआ? अच्छा, औरतों को चाहिए क्या? तो मर्द की तरफ से क्या आ रहा? वो ये कह रहा है औरतों को 2 दिल और 10 जबान। देखिए, मैं नहीं बोल रहा हूं, ये मुहावरे बोल रहे हैं। आप जाके हबला रूदी को पढ़ लीजिए, वो सब लिखा हुआ है उसके अंदर, किताबों में लिखा है, तारीखी किताबों में लिखा है। उसको 2 दिल और 10 जबान चाहिए। आप ये ना समझिएगा कि आपके फेवर में जा रहा है, फेवर में नहीं है, औरतों के फेवर में नहीं है। बहुत खतरनाक है, वेरी डेंजरस। ये क्रिएट कर रहे हैं, एक नोशन क्रिएट किया जा रहा है कि ये होना चाहिए। भाई, अब अगर रिलीजियस वे मिले ना, रिलीजन है इन्वॉल्व, लेकिन बहुत सीरियस। मुझसे मैं जो बात करूं तो मेरी बातों को रिलीजियस वे में न लीजिएगा। जैसे कि मैं उसका वो नहीं, फहीम साहब आप हैं, मैं नहीं। वो दाढ़ी जो है वो तो आप लोगों वाली है। ये भी मत समझिएगा कि मैं रिलीजियस नहीं हूं, बहुत प्रैक्टिस करने वाला, लेकिन मैं उसमें मुदाखलत नहीं कर सकता क्योंकि मेरा शोबा नहीं है, इलाका नहीं। आदम आए, यहां तो बात यह है कि जो पहले कह दे बस। कहते हैं आज वो पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म में क्या है, 6 बार पहले कह दीजिए हो जाए, वही सही है। दिस इज ट्रू। पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म में है हम। क्या हो रहा है? परसेप्शंस, परसेप्टिबिलिटी। आदम आए, उन्होंने कहा हव्वा से कि मैं पैगंबर हूं और मेरी अब औलाद जो चलेगी वो आदमी कहलाएगी। अगर यही पहले हव्वा ने कह दिया होता कि आदम मैं पैगंबर नहीं हूं और अब जो मेरी औलाद चलेगी वो हवाई होगी, तो आज पूरी दुनिया आदमी न होती, हवाई होती। ये मैं लाइटर मूड में कह रहा हूं आपसे, हकीकत मत समझिए। ये इस दुनिया ने समझा हुआ है, जो अपने आप को पावरफुल बनाने जा रही है, उसने रिलीजन के कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट को समझा नहीं। अगर समझा होता तो सूरह निसा और सूरह माइदा को कायदे से इंटरप्रेट किया होता और पढ़ा होता, और रसूल की वो तमाम हदीसें जो मौजूद थी उनको पेश नजर रख के औरत के साथ उस तरह का सुलूक किया होता। अब तालियां बजा सकते हैं। See what is happening. You know, go just see around the world. Not only, I'm not talking about, Hyderabad only. I'm not talking about Telangana. This is not about, India. Rather, go anywhere. You will find such attitude, such behavior. It has developed over a period of time. अभी मैं ऋषिकेश गया था, तो बड़े बाबाओं के बीच में मुझे बोलना पड़ा। उसमें एक आध लिटरेरी भी थे, बाबा लोग लिटरेरी भी हो जाते हैं ना। तो उनमें एक थे कि जो उनका पोएट्री कलेक्शन था, इनको यथार्थवादी कहते हैं, यथार्थवादी है ना। And he started describing in his book, in poetry, started describing, and total book was devoted to his mother. It was, like Maxim Gorky writing my mother, the mother. Maxim Gorky got wo translation is the mother. And Gorky talks about, industries and pollution and the smokes and then fogs and then smogs and so on. And there, in the midst of, polluted environment, my mother, and how to save my mother. This is the crux of the matter, what you find in Maxim Gorky. And then this, socialism and then other, blah, blah. Today, it was really very astonishing to see that a person writing, in Hindi, very wonderfully writing. जब मेरी माँ की खुरदुरी उंगलियां सुबह के वक्त मेरे चेहरे के ऊपर आती थीं और वो स्पर्श होता था कि मैं जाग जाता था, लेकिन वही खुरदुरी उंगलियां धीरे धीरे जब मेरा वजूद बढ़ने लगा आगे, तो वो कोमलता में बदलती चली गई। और आज मैं उस मिट्टी को देखता हूं जिसको वो उठाती थी, तो उससे मुझे खुशबू नजर आती है, उसकी खुशबू को मैं महसूस कर सकता हूं। Now you see, this is essence of life. When you combine the entire environment with your attitude, every component of this environment is important and has its own significance. Then you can build up ecosystem. Otherwise, very simply you can say, okay, keep sacrificing. कुर्बानियां दो, मजाजी खुदा है, चलते रहो, उफ न करो। सब्र की तलकीन, और ये सब्र की तलकीन कब्र तक जाएगी, मिनल महद इलल लहद। But I am sure there are voices, and today I can see number of ladies here. Listen to them very carefully, and voices are there, and protest is there. There's a mild protest within the sentences, and you combine and see the paragraph and realize what is happening. कमाले ज़ब्त को खुद भी तो आजमाऊंगी, मैं अपने हाथों से उसकी दुल्हन सजाऊंगी और सिपुर्द करके उसे चांदनी के हाथों में मैं अपने घर के अंधेरों में लौट जाऊंगी। नेवर बी अंडर रॉन्ग इम्प्रेशन, वो अंधेरे में जाने वाली नहीं है, वो आपको चैलेंज कर रही है। अच्छा तुम ये करोगे, ये करो। See, this is how you read in between lines and see, and I'm sure the Professor Amina Tehseen, Professor Shahida and Professor Farida, they are just involved, in fact, in the affairs, And MANUU fraternity, MANUU students and girls, they will do something for the entire world. Thank you. Thank you very much.
बहुत शुक्रिया सर, आपके अपने ज़हीन ख़यालात का आपने हमारे सामने इज़हार किया। हम लोग और आपको सुनना चाह रहे थे, लेकिन शायद आपकी एक अर्जेंट मीटिंग है जिसकी वजह से आपको जाना पड़ सकता है। तो हम प्रोग्राम की कार्रवाई बढ़ाते हैं आगे। थैंक यू सर। हमारी अगली स्पीकर जो हैं वो हैं प्रोफेसर अजाइलु नुमाई, जो हमारी गेस्ट ऑफ ऑनर हैं। उनको बुलाने से पहले बहुत ही मुख्तसर सा उनका तारुफ मैं आपके सामने पेश करना चाहूँगी। वो समाजियात डिपार्टमेंट की प्रोफेसर हैं, साथ ही साथ सीसिप को हेड कर रही हैं, हैदराबाद सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी। और currently she is also the honorary adjunct professor, Department of Science and Humanities, National Institute of Technology, Nagaland. She has served as a convener for migration and diaspora studies of ISS. She has also been active member in different international and national associations, professional bodies. Her specialization is gender studies, with special focus on human trafficking of girls and women and feminine hygiene, Indian diaspora and migration, Northeast studies, NGOs and development. This is her specialization. She has been awarded by UGC a postdoctoral fellowship by USA in 2013 under Indo-US Knowledge Initiatives. And also, she was granted her first fellow in 2006 by Collaborative Arts and Research Translation for Humane Advancement, USA. She is a visiting fellow and a senior research fellow in the Department of Sociology, University of Johannesburg, South Africa, 2022 till 2025. She is a visiting fellow and of Department of Gender, Women's and Sexuality Studies, University of Iowa, USA. She has a list long of articles and books, which I can't read out over here. Again, we can go in the website and see her vast work she has done in her research area. I now call upon you, ma'am, to please address our august audience. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Amina and also the entire organizing team, Dr. Savannah, Dr. Shahida, and it is a privilege for me to share the dais with my good friend, the chief guest, Professor Arvinder Ansari, and also to be speaking in front of all my colleagues, the deans, the head of departments, and also scholars and members from CSR and students. I would like to begin by saying that all religions basically focuses on equality. And we have heard enough from our honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Hassan, and also from the keynote speaker, Professor Celine. The fact that all the religions does not focus on equality is reflected in our everyday life. And I would like to kind of mention my observations and experiences of gender, culture, and also religion in the Northeast to begin with. I also particularly would like to mention on Christian women. I must say that the epitome of a Christian woman is found in the book of Proverbs. She is a woman who is praised by her husband and her children. She is a woman who sells and bring profit to her family. She is a woman who provides food for her family, who also buys wool and flax and make clothes so that the entire family wear scarlet clothes. And she makes sure that her husband is respected in the city gates. So this is the epitome of a Christian woman. When I look at this epitome of a characteristic of an epitome of a Christian woman, it is almost impossible to possess that kind of characteristic in today's 21st century. She has to get up early. Now, how many of women today would be able to get up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. And engage in all the activities? Practically, you know, these verses were written in the times, in a culture which is relevant to the times of the Old Testament. And interestingly, when we look at the Old Testament, it's clearly written that God created men and women in his image to be equal. So equality is emphasized. And when we look at practically, it is actually not so equal, because when we look at the leadership, it is mostly men who are the priests or the pastors. Of course, in today's time, a good number of women in the Anglican Church in UK have been ordained as a priest. So is in the US and other Western countries. But in India, it is only a handful of women who have been ordained as a priest or pastor. And when I look at culture and relate to religion, it's very interesting to examine how women, Christian women, were not encouraged not only to be the head of the religious institution, but even in the decision-making body at the local level, as well as at the state or national level. When we look at the statistics of Christian majority states, like for example, Mizoram and Nagaland, you will see that the maximum number of legislators, policymakers are men. It is only a few women who are in the decision making. Now, it is also because of not only the religious factor, but more of the cultural constraints, you know, and challenges that hinders these women to come forward. And another thing is how women were not allowed to inherit the immovable property because of the customary law, their own law, besides, you know, leave aside the religious teachings and religious rules, but the customary laws, the cultural laws prohibit women to inherit the immovable property. And when divorce takes place, it is men in most of the cases that benefit, and the women are the losers. I just feel that I need to talk about my work a little bit on how Celine talked in the inaugural about women's menstrual health and reproductive aspects. Well, when we look at women, especially in our country, in the context of the majoritarian religion, Hinduism, women are excluded to even worship their deity at the time of their menstruation. It's very interesting as to how we have temples like the Kamakhya temple in Guwahati, Assam. I have been there a couple of times, where the goddess, menstruating goddess, is worshipped. Just before COVID in 2019, I happened to be there in Kamakhya temple and met saw thousands and thousands of followers from all over the world, not only within our country, and interacted with people. Met a couple who said they've come all the way there, because they believe that they will conceive and the woman will become fertile because they are going to meet, they're going there to see and worship the fertility goddess. So menstruating goddess is worship, but menstruating women are not supposed to worship in the temple. And the example is in Kerala, Sabrimala temple, where girls from menarche, just at the age of 10 to menopause 50, were completely prohibited to enter and worship. And the reason is that the deity is a celibate, a bachelor. And there was a Supreme Court judgment, if I remember, in 2018, which clearly says that all, irrespective of gender, will be allowed to enter the temple and worship, that women and girls should not be discriminated. But it's still a contentious issue. And I also would like to mention here that menstruating women or menstruation is one of the markers of gender differences. And women's bodies are the site of culture and symbolic kind of representation of the norms, taboos, and values of the society. Menstruation, I often say, is the brook of life. If a girl doesn't menstruate, there is no offspring. Without the blood, women's blood, which is considered as impure or profane using sociology's Imal Durkheim's terminology, if she is considered profane, how do we produce offsprings for the future generation? So it's a menstruation, the blood which is considered as profane, polluted, is the wellspring of life. Now, I also would like to just mention here that Article 25 of our Indian Constitution clearly mentioned about religious freedom, but women do not have that freedom, as our previous speakers have mentioned. A lot of research have revealed that women are more religious than men. And I would like to substantiate this statement by my research findings when I conducted in Rasulpura slum, Begumpet, which is the biggest in the twin city of Hyderabad, Secunderabad, or now the trio city of Cyberabad, and also in the Sultan Sahi slum areas of the Charminar. My work, which was funded by I Foundation America and Segal Foundation from the US, work among 400 plus women. Majority of them are Muslims, but there are also respondents from the two other religious groups, that is the Christians and the Hindus. I found that majority of the women are very religious. They do namaz, they do fasting. And even in Christianity or even in Hinduism, fasting is done religiously by women than men. So the question here is, it is not the decline. The important question here is that in today's context, it's not the decline of religion, but it's the growth of religion. And the other important point that I want to make here is that sociology of religion lag behind many other fields of work in taking gender seriously, and we have an epistemology of religion which is produced by male sociologies like Max Weber, The Protestant Ethics and the Spirit of Capitalism, Imal Durkheim's on rules of sociological life, and also Karl Marx, who is famous for his statement, religion is the opium of society. But what I feel is that there is a lacuna in the feminist scholarship on this aspect of gender and religion. And let me I know my time is almost up, so let me just wind up with 3 suggestions for way forward. One is women need to come together, debate, have this kind of academic discourse, share it with the policymakers, and make sure that we encourage this sisterhood among all religious groups, and make sure that we fight to hold leadership positions. That's one of the way forward. And second is women, along with men, fight against various kinds of evils, particularly sexual harassment. And the third way forward is women to come together, especially women from the minority religious groups, to come together and assert for their rights to not only cast their votes, but to fight elections at the local level as well as the state and national level. That is because without having a political power, without having an economic power, women cannot achieve equality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving such an enlightened and thought-provoking address for us. And now it's time for the address by our chief guest, Professor Arvinder Ansari. Before I call her, again, a very brief introduction of hers. She is currently the Honorary Director, Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, and Professor at Department of Sociology, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. She is a trained sociologist with teaching and research experience of more than 25 years. Her core research areas are sociology of ethnicity and minority studies, sociology of gender, feminist sociology. I'm very briefly, I'm just going to, cultural studies. I'm just focusing on your research area so that our audience also knows that what are your specialization. And her, again, sociology of globalization, here's a research area which focuses on the issues of identity, conflict, peace, and urban studies, with special focus on spatial segregation. Even she has a list long of her publications and books, and she has completed 6 major research projects and minor research projects, which includes her major research project on half widows of Kashmir. Ma'am, I would very wholeheartedly welcome, and I would like to call you for your address. Thank you.
Friends, I take this opportunity, though in absentia, Professor Anul Hassan Saab, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Amina Tehseen, Dr. Shabana Kaisar, my dear friend Shahida Murtaza, Dr. Ziauddin from MANUU, giving me this opportunity to be here and to interact with you people. In the same breath, I would also like to acknowledge that it is always a learning experience to share stage with Professor Ajailo. And I would also like to acknowledge my gratitude to the Center for Research, which is in Delhi, which also Center for Study and Research, and Women Education, Department of Women Education, for inviting me to participate and share my thoughts on a very pertinent issue on religion and gender, beliefs, practices, and beyond. And friends, we have been listening to all the speakers prior to me who have problematized that how important is this relationship between gender and religion. And Vice Chancellor also highlighted that, is there an agency? And when he talks about agency, I think he's referring that do women have that voice? That's very important question he has left with us. And also, Professor Agile also has talked about that, we do talk about gender and why gender has been missing. When we talk about sociology, thank you bringing in sociology here. And because my parent discipline is sociology, we always talk about fathers of sociology. Father of sociology, where are the mothers of discipline? Have you ever talked about mother of any discipline? No, it is always father. So this invisibility that has been talked by sociologists is that, and that is, feminist sociologists, they brought forth this invisibility of women, where they feel that the mainstream, they call it male stream, is basically male's ideology and epistemology. With this idea in my mind, I would try to share my thoughts, because I was asked to kind of throw light on the perspective of this very, very important uh, seminar, which is trying to understand the intersectionality of gender and religion. And this intersectionality is very deep and pervasive in everyone's life. So it is very important to understand the intersection of religion and gender, because religion practices shape gender roles. What Ajaila was telling, that we see that scriptures talk about women, and they place women at highest epistome. But what happens is, when the practice and belief, the beliefs are egalitarian, but the practices, there is a major gap in the belief and practice, and it needs to be researched, it needs to be discussed and talked about. So religion is very important to shape gender roles, norms and behaviors by providing them with a moral sanction, that what do we do, and what is moral and what is um, sacred is very important question. So the study of intersection of religion and gender together remains largely unknown field, and rightly pointed out by my friend Professor Ajailo, that sociology of religion has missed on gender, and this connection between religion and gender is very significant. We generally avoid to talk about it because it's very sensitive, it is very critical, because the voices which are there are very critical voices. So um, it is very important to understand the way gender is produced, performed, and sustained and reproduced under the influence of religion and religious practices. Something that the feminist movements aim to recognize, redefine, and redraft whenever it is possible. As pointed by Judith Butler, and I quote, gender is the cultural meaning and form that body acquires, the various modes of body's acculturation. The belief in performing prescribed rituals of gender over and over again through one's lifetime is indispensable for maintaining this social order. So, this shows that gender and religion remain inextricably intertwined with one another, as both the institutions help continuing social order. So social order is very important, and we don't want to challenge the social order. Why don't we want to challenge the social order? Because the comfort zone would be shaken, and that is the dictum of all the religions, that continuity and social order should be maintained. Religion offers moral sanction, gender adds to this sanction. That is very important. However, feminist dilemma of religion, that is the supposition that religion has an inherent incongruity with interests of women, is also functional. It's very important. Feminists also did not talk about religion. They did not talk about religion because they thought that religion is an oppressive. So this stand needs to be corrected, because later what happened, again I would refer, Agilo was talking about Durkheim, I would bring in Marx and Weber also. They were the thinkers who thought that religion would lose its sheen with coming of industrialization, modernization, and globalization. But what we have seen, that religion did not lose its sheen, and it's important. Now what we see, the reassertion of religion has become a very important question. The kind of rise of radical right globally and very significantly in our country does talk about religion being a very important part of our lives, and this intersectionality of patriarchy, gender, ethnicity, religion has become very pervasive. So The empirical reality did not support the views that religion would be diluted, religion will fizzle out. At the dawn of the 21st century, uh, the resurgence is very important, and it is clear that religious parties and interests remain key political power brokers in many countries, including United Nations, and religious extremism and conflicts in South Asia. Uh, in Indian context, religion is gaining momentum as religion-based divisive politics is inherent nature of a ruling party. Gender is an salient feature of religion in many parts of world and in many religious traditions. Cultural and religious continuity in the Middle East, Africa, the visibility of women's voices and movements in Arab Spring uprisings, Hindu nationalist victory in Indian elections, and Europeans grappling with Muslim communities, religious symbols and practices question about gender and religion have assumed a transformed urgency. In the United States, despite expectations that the cultural wars will subside, debates surrounding issues such as abortion, contraception, same sex marriage, teenage sexuality, sexual violence, the division of labor in the household, and women's sexual agency continue to be polarized by religious affiliation. The aim of this conference is not only to bring religion to the attention of gender and the feminist scholars, but also to encourage religious religion scholars to consider gender not just as a variable, but as a social structure, and it is very important. We hope that the proceedings in this seminar will deliberate on this question, that how do we bridge the gap, in theology, sociology, and gender studies. The researches, whatever documentation has been done on women's religious experiences, demystifying religious traditions, oppressive qualities, more recent studies have been grounded in critical feminist scholarship. The literature, we see that literature is becoming increasingly interdisciplinary, adding to our understandings of gendered religious structures and how religious communities practice and institutions reproduce or challenge gendered identities and institutions. Most prominently, it has been demonstrated that religious women can be agentative when operating within seemingly oppressive cultural and institutional context. The question, which Vice Chancellor also read, do women have agency? Do women have agency to say no to the religious sanctions? Now, very importantly, one thing which is good is that we see that the understanding of religion through gender perspective has brought a new light. While the previous work sought to add women's voices and experiences to the study of religion, began to examine more nuanced questions pertaining to gender and social institutions. For instance, if we see the work of pioneering Moroccan sociologist Fatima Mernissi became became more popular among the sociologists of not only Middle East, but has become a very important classic document. Understanding of Islam by Fatima Mernissi or Beyond the Veil are very, very important discourses which have tried to interpret the scriptures from the gender perspective. And when it is when Professor Anwar Hassan, Vice Chancellor sir, was making mention of Surah al-Nisa, what is the right interpretation of Surah al-Nisa is very important. What does it talk, and what kind of rights it grants to women, Muslim women, is also a very important question. And I would also like to share, it is only in Islam that marriage is contract, and the consent of both the partners is very important. So this question also questioned the gendered nature of Islamic fundamentalism, and her argument about its relationship to anxieties of modernization have been both prominent in the discipline as well as subject of much debate. It has become a kind of social phenomena that, if I am too religious, so I am kind of termed as an orthodox conservative person, but beautifully Islamic feminism has brought in this debate and has tried to bridge the gap that how there can be an interface between modernity and religion and how we can balance it is also very important question. And we see that post 1911 there has been increase in sociological studies of Islam and gender in variety of contexts globally. And Muslim women has always been a quest of inquiry. She has been always, if you see literature you would find so much on Muslim women, but still there are glaring prejudices and biases which are prevailing in academia and research, in policy, as far as Muslim women is concerned. Another very important area which I want to point out is patriarchy. When we talk about social structure, we cannot escape talking about patriarchy. Patriarchy, in collaboration with oppressive agencies such as church, other religious institutions, and law, tends to establish a binary structure which historically and ideologically subordinates women. From ancient society to recent society, there has been drastic change in the status of women, from goddess, deities to subordinate. Women are regarded as source of sin to original sin. On the basis of notions of purity and pollution, what she pointed out, Ajailo pointed out in her fieldwork in menstruation and the example of Kamakhya and Sabrimala, women are considered as impure and polluted. Obedience and loyalty towards men are considered core values. All scriptures say that, it's called Mizaze Khuda. What is it called? Majazi Khuda. That he is your husband is always referred as Majazi Khuda or Pati Parameshwar hai. So, these kind of logics are given. So, men are considered the custodians of core values for women, and women are treated as subjugated who are to be in the custody of men, whether it is father, brother, husband, son. They are considered as carriers of social and religious purity, and that makes them vulnerable. Especially the women of minorities become vulnerable when it comes to the question of communal violence, ethnic conflict. They are the most vulnerable victims. They are the carriers of religious purity, virginity, chastity are highly cherished among women. Women have not become prophet or religious leaders. God is always referred as He. Indeed, it's clear that religion is often used to legitimize patriarchal hierarchies, and yet secular worldviews and organizations have their own forms of what Judith Butler has referred, and I quote, gender trouble. She says this is precisely why secular organizations and international agencies have been constantly encouraged to more meaningful engagement in gender sensitive planning, programming, and implementation through gender and development. We have always find that the religion and gender are in contestation. So we need to correct this understanding. They are not always in contestation. Women who talk about their rights or the feminists have been always misconstrued and misconstructed and misunderstood, that they kind of reject religion outrightly. And we see that there is now postmodernism is talking about the interaction, the interface between these two institutions. While different aspects of identity are increasingly understood to shape diverse experiences of and agency within conflict, religion and gender are still often treated as separate categories. Intersectional analysis examines gender and religion as overlapping rather than parallel categories, enabling through understanding of conflict dynamics and inclusive peace programming strategies. What happens is that in faith studies, these are the times when we are also very much into faith studies, faith-based studies, and faith-based studies have also important role to play in the situations of social problems and crises, have also kind of been treated women as passive victims of religious ideologies, and are trying to actively create religious and political, recreate and reproduce religious and political lives of women. I have been told that I can, I have to be a little short, and I think I have another 2-3 minutes to, yeah, it's 2 minutes. I'll try to do that. So, uh, I'll skip, but still I have, very important point to make, that as we see the intersectionality, we have seen that this intersectionality can be highlighted by the various gender and religion relationships, which are very important. I would like to highlight for the few, maybe in the discussion and the panel discussion, that it is very important to understand the kind of intersectionality of gender and religion is taking place in Boko Haram, in Nigeria. And it is also very important that what kind of Islamic education it is offering to increase its uh, empowerment and emancipation among the women. In Myanmar, we see Buddhist nationalist groups invoking narratives of religion and gender to construct Buddhist self and Muslims other. And we see these narratives are being created. If we look at the narrative, Hindu nationalists are also creating. They are also saying that Hindu women is in danger, and you need, all these discourses on love jihad, or for instance ghar wapsi. What are these discourses? These discourses are projecting Hindu women as a very, very vulnerable identity who can fall victim, and this victim is being created. Similarly, we see, in Myanmar, the conflict between Buddhist and Muslims, where Buddhist nationalists try to project Muslims as other, Christians, kind of safeguarding their masculinity. And very importantly, if we see the studies of Paula Bacheta, she has done a very interesting study on Rashtriya Swamsevika, where she talks about this intersectionality, and where she talks about Sita and Durga. Durga as an icon of power, which wages war against the other, and the other, we know who it is. Similarly, if we take example of Jainism, I just want to give these examples. It is not only when we look at Muslim women, we talk about her subordination. It is all religions when you look at. Similarly, in Jainism, the Digambara sect of Jainism argues that women are inferior to men and cannot achieve salvation. Why they cannot achieve salvation? Because they state that women's inability to commit morally corrupt acts from which they can gain salvation. They feel that women are more susceptible. They can be, they can fall to the vices prevalent in the society. They don't have that kind of integrity. Second very important question is, moksha can only be achieved by being monastic. But being monastic includes giving up clothes, which women cannot do for the kind of physiology they have. So for attaining that salvation, you have to kind of forego clothing, which is very difficult, and that is what is hindering them to get moksha. They again also say that since women are not allowed to participate in debates because they are not allowed to argue, it is also taught in all scriptures that you don't have to argue. Argumentative aspect of women has been kind of curtailed in all religious scriptures. So this is also very important aspect, and therefore they cannot spiritually enlighten and emancipate themselves. So we see very interesting example where we talk about, just last point, that when we were talking about women, and we see that we feel that women is a very submissive, subversive entity, but there was this NTCA NRC protest in India and globally, and we see Muslim women from Shaheen Bagh sat against the act for more than 90 days, as they were the women who were primarily homemakers, caretakers of children. They were all cladded in hijab. So we can see the interface between religiosity, feminism, and gender, which was very vocal with its presence, and the kind of resistance movement, new social movements, the resistance movement it has shaped. The women of Shaheen Bagh represented the confluence of religion, feminism, agitation, political movement, and moral sanctions together. So, there are political implications of conferences like these. It is very important that we become more inclusive. The idea of this seminar is to have a perspective which brings in, unfortunately what happens whenever we talk about gender and whenever we talk about religion, it is only we talk about Muslim women. So I think, the deliberations in this seminar will bring the marginality and vulnerability and exclusion of women from all communities, and more significantly from the most marginalized and vulnerable communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really a treat to hear from you. You have touched the essential and different aspects related to gender and religion with respect to different religions. And definitely we'll hear more from you in the next plenary session. अब हम अपने प्रोग्राम के आखिरी मरहले पे आ चुके हैं, जहाँ मैं उन तमाम अफराद का शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहूँगी जिन्होंने इस सेमिनार के इनकाद में ताउन पेश किया है। सबसे पहले मैं हमारे वाइस चांसलर प्रोफेसर सैयद ऐनुल हसन साहब का शुक्रिया अदा करती हूँ, जिन्होंने इस सेमिनार की सरपरस्ती की और यहाँ पे अपने तमाम तर मसरूफियत के बावजूद वो यहाँ हमारे साथ शरीक रहे और साथ ही साथ उन्होंने अपने ख्यालात का इजहार भी किया। और मैं आप तमाम हाजरीन का भी यहाँ पे शुक्रिया अदा करते चलूँ कि जिन्होंने बहुत ही सब्र और तहम्मुल के साथ इस प्रोग्राम में शिरकत भी की और इसको समाअत फरमाया। मैं IMC और CSIT और इंजीनियरिंग सेक्शन के टीम को भी का भी शुक्रिया अदा करती हूँ, जिन्होंने लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग, जिनकी वजह से लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग जो है हमारे लिए पॉसिबल हो पाया। और मैं उन तमाम नाजरीन का भी शुक्रिया अदा करती हूँ जो ऑनलाइन हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं, उनका भी शुक्रिया अदा। और हमारे डिपार्टमेंट के स्कॉलर्स एंड स्टूडेंट्स का भी जिन्होंने इस सेमिनार के इनकाद में ताउन पेश किया है। जी मैम, नहीं है, बिल्कुल नहीं है, ये तो इनॉग्रल के लिए है शुक्रिया अदा, और आप तमाम स्टूडेंट्स एंड स्कॉलर्स का जो यहाँ पे हाजिर हुए हैं। इस छोटे से ऐलान के साथ मैं इसके इख्तिताम का ऐलान करती हूँ कि इसके बाद एक 10 मिनट का वक्फा होगा चाय का, और उसके फौरी बाद हम यहाँ पे जमा होंगे अपने प्लेनरी सेशन के लिए, जो कि वक्फे के बाद होगा। मैं अब IMC की टीम से गुजारिश करती हूँ कि वो नेशनल एंथम प्ले करें।
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा, तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तव जय गाथा। जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।